العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. Today, inshallah, I'm going to talk about Surat Al-Waqi', and depending on how time goes, I may add to it Surat Al-Hadid. We're still in the cluster of surahs from Qaf to Al-Hadid, and these surahs draw comparisons and offer choices. And they allow us to see the differences between people who make certain choices and the consequences of these choices. And the focus is mostly on choices that have a lot to do with our behavior and the answers to the bigger questions of life itself. Surah Al-Waqi' is a very beloved surah. People tend to recite it quite often in prayers and even on a daily basis. And there are certain myths surrounding it regarding rizq and all that. There's very little evidence to support any of that, really. But that doesn't take away from the fact that the surah carries a very special place in the hearts of people in the hearts of Muslims in general. And for good reason, because the story that it tells and the comparison that it draws is extremely important. The surah is a Makki surah, and it begins by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, إِذَا وَقَعَتِ الْوَاقِعَةِ لَيْسَ لِوَقَعَتِهَا كَاذِبَةٌ خَافِضَةٌ رَافِعَةٌ. When al-waqi'ah, the waqi'ah is the occurrence, something that occurs. We use the word waqa'a. Waqa'a is to fall. But it really is to fall into reality, meaning for it to become a reality, for it to actually occur. So the waqa'at al-waqi'ah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says when the occurrence actually occurs, and He's referring to the day of judgment. لَيْسَ لِوَقَعَتِهَا كَاذِبَةٌ. Nothing will stop its occurrence. Nothing can hold it back. Nothing can change its course. خَافِضَةٌ رَافِعَةٌ. It will cause certain people to be in lower status and certain people to be higher status. Now the point that Surat Al-Waqi' makes, and I find it to be very important, is that in dunya, we judge each other, let's say, based on certain criteria. Meaning the place that you have in society is based on a number of things. It's based on how much wealth you have. It's based on what certificates you carry, how much knowledge you have, what social status you have, your age, your profession, your job, your family name. Unfortunately, the color of your skin plays a role. All these elements play a role in giving you your final, status score, putting you somewhere in society on this huge scale. And the socioeconomic status is something that is even used scientifically to study communities and to study populations and see how many people are in the lower bracket and how many are in the upper bracket and what does middle class mean. When you hear the word middle class, what does middle class mean? What are they being judged based on? Their faith? No, they're being judged on how much money they make a year. And that is how dunya works. That's how judgment works. That's how we find our places in society and we give others their place in society. And it's a system that's been around for as long as human beings have been around. Yawm al-Qiyamah, that's not how it works. Yawm al-Qiyamah, people lose all of that. Whatever status you carried in dunya, you don't find Yawm al-Qiyamah. You were a politician, you were a doctor, you had this much money, you owned this much land, you were famous, you were known, you were revered, you were respected, and all of that is gone. Now, Yawm al-Qiyamah, when the waqi'ah occurs, when the waqi'ah actually occurs, خَافِضَةٌ رَافِعَةٌ, that will lower certain people and elevate others, there's a different criteria. Your status is dictated by a different set of rules that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains in Surah Al-Waqi'. That's why it's very important. And it's a surah that people hold dearly to their hearts, because it reminds us that, especially those who are living a life that is difficult and the opportunities they were offered were scarce and they didn't get a chance to go as far as they would have liked to go in life. Surah Al-Waqi' reminds us, Yawm al-Qiyamah, don't worry. It won't carry over. The status that people build in dunya, whatever the source of it is, their wealth, their health, their social status, whatever it is, it's not going to carry over Yawm al-Qiyamah. Yawm al-Qiyamah, the set of rules are different. It's based on amal al-salih. It's based on good deeds. It's based on how close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were you. It's based on your values, your ethics, your acts of worship. Were you a straight shooter in this life? Did you walk the straight path? Were you someone who held on to the higher values of Islam or not? That's what's going to dictate what status you're going to be in. If there is upper class, mid class, and lower class in the dunya, something similar Yawm al-Qiyamah, but not the same. He says subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَكُنْتُمْ أَزْوَاجًا ثَلَاثًا. And on that day, you'll be three pairs. There'll be three groups, Yawm al-Qiyamah. فَأَصْحَابُ الْمَيْمَنَةِ مَا أَصْحَابُ الْمَيْمَنَةِ. The people of the right. And what do you know about the people of the right? That's what the ayah is saying. وَأَصْحَابُ الْمَشْأَمَةِ مَا أَصْحَابُ الْمَشْأَمَةِ. And the people of the left, and what do you know of the people of the left? وَالسَّابِقُونَ السَّابِقُونَ. And the ones that are running ahead. The front runners. It almost sounds like a political race, doesn't it? Right, left, front runners. I believe that the Quran specifically used these words. And these words are similar to but they have a completely different set of laws that generate them and explain them. In dunya, yeah, they're the right, they're the left. But what does right and left mean in dunya? It means something completely different. Yawm al-Qiyamah, right and left is going to be a different story. And then you have as-sabiqun, the front runners. The ones are way up ahead of everyone else. Was-sabiqun as-sabiqun. And the Surat Al-Waqi begins by talking about them. أُولَٰئِكَ الْمُقَرَّبُونَ. They're the ones who are drawn the closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're the ones who are the closest to Him. فِي جَنَّاتِ النَّعِيمِ ثُلَّةٌ مِّنَ الْأَوَّلِينَ وَقَلِيلٌ مِّنَ الْآخِرِينَ. A large group from the earlier ages and a smaller group from the later ages. We're actually given a simple statistic. We're given some numbers. Well, not really, but we're given an idea what these numbers look like. Those who are going to be those who are front runners Yawm al-Qiyamah are very close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ahead of the rest of the group. A large portion of them come from the early ages, and a smaller portion comes from the later ages, which we are a part of. And this is a lesson for us to learn. If you want to be amongst those front runners, you have to put in extra effort. Not a lot of them are going to be from our times. For many reasons. على سرر موضونة متكئين عليها متقابلين. They're reclining on decorated couches, sitting in front of each other. يطوف عليهم ولدان مخلدون. As their servants walk amongst them. بأكواب وأباريق وكأس من معين. They have cups of different sizes and different colors with different drinks in it, different drinks in them. لا يصدعون عنها ولا ينزفون. When they drink whatever they're being offered, they don't become drunk. They don't get intoxicated. They don't walk away with headaches. وَفَاكِهَةٍ مِّمَّا يَتَخَيَّرُونَ وَلَحْمِ طَيْرٍ مِّمَّا يَشْتَهُونَ وَحُورٌ عِينٌ كَأَمْثَالِ اللُّؤْلُؤِ الْمَكْنُونِ. And they'll be eating whatever they wish to eat, from fruits and from meat. And they have their spouses there. لا يسمعون فيها لغوا ولا تأثيما إلا قيلا سلاما سلاما. They don't hear where they are anything that would bother them. Nothing that will bother the ear. They won't hear any sin. They won't hear anything that disturbs them. All they hear is salam. Salam is words of peace, words of greeting. And that's the first group. Surat Al-Waqi is going to show us three different groups. And you get to choose. And it gives us a hint towards the end of it. How to achieve these statuses. أصحاب اليمين ما أصحاب اليمين. Or is it ميمنة? Yamin, right? أصحاب اليمين, which is the same thing. ميمنة and يمين are so. في سدر مخضود. In large low trees. وطلح منضود. And layered banana trees. وفاكهة كثيرة. And a lot of fruit. لا مقطوعة ولا ممنوعة. It's not cut down, nor is it forbidden. The concept of forbidden fruit that Adam alayhi salam was told not to eat from. None of that fruit is forbidden for the people, for Ashab al-Yamin as they're in Jannah. وفرش مرفوعة, and elevated couches. All these descriptions are for the people who are going to be in the second group. Now, the beauty of how the distribution happens Yawm al-Qiyamah is the fact that out of three groups, two are going to do well, and only one is not going to do well. Out of three, you have a 66% chance Yawm al-Qiyamah of making it, because there are three groups. It's not two groups are punished, no. Two groups are going to make it. One group is way ahead. يعني السابقون that we talked about. And then the second group is doing pretty well. They're up there. وفرش مرفوعة يعني إنا أنشأناهن إنشاء فجعلناهن أبكارا عربا أترابا لأصحاب اليمين ثلة من الأولين وثلة من الآخرين. And they have their spouses. They're in a place that they're enjoying their existence, and the statistics for this group is ثلة من الأولين, a large group from the early ages, وثلة من الآخرين, and a large group also from the later ages. Then وأصحاب الشمال ما أصحاب الشمال, the people of the left. في سموم وحميم, scorching fire and scalding water. في سموم وحميم وظل من يحموم, and a shade of black smoke. لا بارد ولا كريم, it's not cool, it's not pleasant. إنهم كانوا قبل ذلك مترفين وكانوا يصرون على الحنث العظيم وكانوا يقولون أئذا متنا وكنا ترابا وعظاما أئنا لمبعوثون أو آباؤنا الأولون. Three things they did. Mutrafin, they were extravagant in their consuming of materialistic assets. They were extravagant, they used too much of it. They were focused way too much on their leisure while others around them were suffering. Mutrafin. They didn't care for giving those who were in need their haqq from their money, from their wealth. وَكَانُوا يُصِرُّونَ عَلَى الْحِنْثِ الْعَظِيمِ. And they held on strongly, in a steadfast way, to the large lie. الحنث العظيم is the great lie. What is the الحنث العظيم? الحنث العظيم is shirk. الحنث العظيم is refusal of believing in La ilaha illallah, of believing or associating someone else with God subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the biggest problem of all. وَكَانُوا يَقُولُونَ أَئِذَا مِتْنَا وَكُنَّا تُرَابًا وَعِظَامًا أَئِنَّا لَمَبْعُوثُونَ. And they will say, what, if we die, we're going to be resurrected again? Three things. They consumed and didn't give. They were not muwahid, they didn't show tawheed, and they didn't believe in resurrection. These are the three reasons that Surat Al-Waqi points out for why they're there. Surat Al-Waqi تجري مقارنة أخرى. نحن الآن في محور السور من قاف إلى الحديد. كل سورة تعرض لنا مقارنة وتخيرنا بين حالين. أما سورة الواقعة فهي تعرض لنا مقارنة بين ثلاث أحوال وتخيرنا بين ثلاث. إذا وقعت الواقعة ليس بوقعتها كاذبة، هذا يوم القيامة، خافضة رافعة. يوم القيامة تخفض أناسا وترفع أناسا. في الدنيا يا إخواني الإنسان يحكم عليه من خلال مجموعة من العوامل. أنت مكانك في المجتمع تحكمه عوامل عدة. تحكمه ما عندك من المال، ما عندك من الجاه الاجتماعي، نسبك، حسبك، شكلك، للأسف لون جلدك في كثير من الأحوال، مستوى تعليمك، عدد شهاداتك، كل هذه الأمور تحكم مكانك في المجتمع. محصلتها تعطيك مكانا معينا، الناس يعرفونك من خلالها، وأنت تعرف نفسك في المجتمع الذي تحيا به من خلال هذه العوامل. للأسف هذه المحصلة لا تستمر معك بعد الموت. لما تبعث يوم القيامة ما تبعث معك هذه العوامل. المكانة التي كنت عليها في الدنيا لا تبعث معك يوم الدين، ما تأتي معك، تتركها تخلفها وراءك. يوم القيامة المكانة تحكمها قواعد مختلفة. يعني الذي يحكم مكانتك يوم القيامة أمور مختلفة تماما عن التي حكمت عليك في الدنيا أو التي أودتك إلى مكانتك في الدنيا. يوم القيامة القواعد مختلفة. يوم القيامة هي قائمة على رضا الله عنك، على قربك من الله سبحانه وتعالى، على عملك الصالح، على أخلاقك النبيلة، على قيمك العالية، على التزامك بهذه القيم والأخلاق وممارستك لها. هذا هو الذي سيحكم مكانك يوم القيامة. في الواقعة هذه خافضة رافعة. يأتي إنسان مكانته عالية لكن ما التزم بهذا فيخفض. أناس آخرون عاشوا عمرا ليس عندهم فرص ولم يكن عندهم تعليم وعاشوا في الفقر والمرض، لكن كانوا ملتزمين بالقيم العالية والأخلاق الفاضلة وكانوا قريبين من الله سبحانه وتعالى متوكلين عليه، فترفعهم يوم القيامة. لأن المعيار الذي يحكم أحوال الناس يوم الدين يوم الواقعة ليس ليس نفس المعيار الذي يحكم مكانتنا في الدنيا، فلا نغتر بالمكانة التي عندنا. إذا الآن أنت سعيد بما يعني أوتيته في هذه الدنيا، تشعر أنك يعني في مكانة جميلة مرتاح، الناس يحترمونك ومبجل ومعظم وعندك مال، هذا لا يستمر يوم القيامة، هذا تسلبه يوم الدين. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى ألا يعني يسلب منا ذلك يوم القيامة، وأن يعني يرفع مقدارنا أجمعين يوم الدين، آمين. لكن الذي سيحكم هذه الأمور مجموعة من العوامل مختلفة. ففي الدنيا مالك وجاهك وتعليمك ومعارفك ويعني اتصالاتك بالآخرين رفعتك، فيوم القيامة تحتاج إلى العمل الصالح والأخلاق الفاضلة حتى ترفعك، فتأكد من حصولها ووجودها حتى تبقى في نفس المنزلة، وإلا خافضة رافعة. ثم يتحدث سبحانه وتعالى عن هذا الواقع، ويعطينا يعني المقارنة بين الأصناف الثلاثة. وكنتم أزواجا ثلاثة، فأصحاب الميمنة ما أصحاب الميمنة، وأصحاب المشأمة ما أصحاب المشأمة، والسابقون السابقون. فيبدأ بالحديث عنهم: أولئك المقربون في جنات النعيم، ثلة من الأولين وقليل من الآخرين. هذه إحصائية هؤلاء السابقون، أنه كثير منهم يأتي من العصور الأولى وقليل منهم يأتي من العصور المتأخرة، ونحن من العصور المتأخرة. فإذا أردنا أن نكون من هؤلاء فعلينا أن نجتهد أكثر مما اجتهد غيرنا حتى نكون من السابقين. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى يجعلنا منهم، اللهم آمين. ثلاث أصناف. الجميل في المسألة أن صنفين من هؤلاء الأصناف الثلاثة في الجنة وصنف في النار، يعني احتمالاتك 66%. وهذا جيد، وهذا جميل في سورة الواقعة. في الدنيا هناك يعني الطبقة المترفة والطبقة العالية، الطبقة المتوسطة، الطبقة الدونية والدنيا، هذا كله عبر المال، يعني يحكمه يعني علماء الاجتماع بالدخل السنوي والدخل الشهري. يوم القيامة القضية محكومة بأمور مختلفة، أمور أخرى تماما. ثلة من الأولين وقليل من الآخرين على سور موضونة متكئين عليها متقابلين، يطوف عليهم ولدان مخلدون بأكواب وأباريق وكأس من معين لا يصدعون عنها ولا ينزفون، وفاكهة مما يتخيرون ولحم طير مما يشتهون، وحور عين كأمثال اللؤلؤ المكنون جزاء بما كانوا يعملون، لا يسمعون فيها لغوا ولا تأثيما إلا قيلا سلاما سلاما. هذا حال السابقين. لم تأتي السورة لتشرح لنا أفعالهم ولا لتحدثنا عن أعمالهم، هذا عليك أن تكتشفه بنفسك. هذا تعود إلى كتاب الله فتقرأ فيه وتقرأ سير الصالحين وتجالسهم فتتعلم كيف تكون من السابقين. هدف السورة المقارنة بين مأواهم يوم الدين. هدف السورة أن تعلمنا أن هناك أصناف مختلفة يوم القيامة عن الأصناف التي تراها في الدنيا، وأن هذه هي أحوالهم. وأنت اخترت، تريد أن تكون من السابقين، اذهب وابحث عنهم. تريد أن تكون من أصحاب اليمين، وأصحاب اليمين ما أصحاب اليمين، في سدر مخضود وطلح منضود وظل ممدود وماء مسكوب وفاكهة كثيرة لا مقطوعة ولا ممنوعة وفرش مرفوعة. يعني وصف عجيب جميل. لكن أصحاب اليمين ثلة من الأولين وثلة من الآخرين. الإحصائية تختلف، عدد كبير من يعني القرون الأولى وعدد كبير من القرون المتأخرة، يعني الاحتمالات هنا أعظم للوصول، وكلاهما خير، لكن السابقين أفضل. لكن حال السابقين أفضل، وإن كان الحالان يعني خيرا. ثم يتحدث عن الصنف الثالث: وأصحاب الشمال ما أصحاب الشمال، في سموم وحميم وظل من يحموم لا بارد ولا كريم، إنهم كانوا، ثلاث حاجات أودت بهم إلى هذا. إنهم كانوا قبل ذلك مترفين. الترف هذا الذي يعني كثرة المال مع عدم الإنفاق، واستخدامه في غير موضعه، واستخدامه يعني في الإسراف يعني. وكانوا يصرون على الحنث العظيم، الشرك، وكانوا يقولون إذا متنا وكنا ترابا وعظاما أئنا لمبعوثون، الكفر بالبعث يوم القيامة. عد القرآن ثلاثة. And then the surah continues and it talks a bit more about where the third group is going to be. ثم إنكم أيها الضالون المكذبون لآكلون من شجر من زقوم فمالئون منها البطون. It talks even more about the punishment that they're going to find. If you go to the ayat, you'll see it there, and it's a harsh tone. But that's how you do a comparison, isn't it? You show the extreme differences. In order for a comparison to work, We have to be able to show the differences. Now, there are differences. You can say, well, we can see the difference between the third group and the first two groups. But are there differences between the first two groups? There are. And if it wasn't for the fact that I only have 30 minutes to do this, I would have pointed out for you exactly how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala points out differences in terms of the level of leisure and luxury that they have. And if you're really interested in this surah, go and take a look and compare the verses that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes was-sabiqun as-sabiqun and describes ashabul yamin ma ashabul yamin. You'll see a difference, and it's there. But anything that is close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is khair. And then the ayat start giving us a theological argument. It gives a theological argument, and then it talks about the Quran, and then it talks about death. It talks about three things after it gives this comparison. As if to point us in the direction of how we're going to achieve what we want. If you want one of the first two groups, and you try to be ambitious for the first one, then you have to have a few things settled down. You have to set a few things down. The first one is your belief in Allah. أَفَرَأَيْتُم مَا تُمْنُونَ أأنتم تخلقونه أم نحن الخالقون نحن قدرنا بينكم الموت وما نحن بمسبوقين أفرأيتم ما تحرثون أأنتم تزرعونه أم نحن الزارعون لو نشاء لجعلناه حطاما فظلتم تفكهون أفرأيتم الماء الذي تشربون أفرأيتم النار التي تورون. It starts pointing out, do you see, and it talks about semen. What it's talking about here is life. Talking about the fact that when we're able to produce children. How does that happen? What contribution do you have in all that? What exactly do you do to actually go from a little bit of water to a complete functioning human being? Nothing. How do you grow things from the ground? Besides putting a seed in some water, do you actually go and do you know what's happening in that seed? Are you able to control any of it? No. What about the water that you drink? Are you the one who evaporates it from the seas and make sure that there's enough wind to move the cloud? No, when it comes down, maybe you can gather it, but that's as far as it goes. What about fire? What do you do with it? Why is it that wood burns and offers the heat that it offers? How? We don't know. We do it, but we're not a part of it. We're not able to control it. We can barely describe it. Surah is using these extremely important theological arguments so that you come to a point of certainty. So that certainty will allow you to become the Muslim that you need to become. And these arguments of Al-Waqi are very important. Because without them, without that clarity, without that certainty, nothing works. Nothing works. There's the smallest amount of doubt in your heart, life will expose it. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. فلا أقسم بمواقع النجوم وإنه لقسم لو تعلمون عظيم إنه لقرآن كريم في كتاب مكنون لا يمسه إلا المطهرون تنزيل من رب العالمين أفبهذا الحديث أنتم مدهنون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, I take an oath by all the constellations and where they are in the sky. Indeed, this is a glorious and noble book. The Quran it is preserved and it is pure, and only the pure will truly understand it and be able to learn from it. And it is descended from the Lord of everything. أَفَبِهَذَا الْحَدِيثِ أَنْتُمْ مُدْهِنُونَ. You're going to sell out on this. You're going to sell out on the Quran. You're going to وَتَجْعَلُونَ رِزْقَكُمْ أَنَّكُمْ تُكَذِّبُونَ. You've accepted your provision to be refusal of this book and refusal of following what's in it. Unfortunately, that's the case. And the surah moves on and talks about death for a moment. فَلَوْلَا إِذَا بَلَغَتِ الْحُلُقُ وَأَنْتُمْ حِينَئِذٍ تَنْظُرُونَ وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْكُمْ وَلَكِنْ لَا تُبْصِرُونَ. As the spirit is being removed from the body, and it's right there at the throat, and you can't see it. You're looking at him, but you don't see it. And we're closer to him at that moment than you are. فَلَوْلَا إِن كُنْتُمْ غَيْرَ مَدِينِينَ. You don't believe in God? Go ahead, fix it. Return the spirit into the body again. تَرْجِعُونَهَا إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. You can't. The surah ends with a final comparison. It takes us to death because these are the three elements, isn't it? Theology, true belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Quran, following the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And death, understanding that things will end and working towards that. Those are the three basic stuff that you need. You need to have those three somewhere posted on your billboard or one, so you never forget them. You know who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. You have certainty with him, in Him. You believe in the noble and the purity of the Quran and the holiness of the Quran, and that is something that is as important to you, and you live by it, and you never forget that death is near. It will happen any moment, and you can't stop it, so you should be ready. فَأَمَّا إِنْ كَانَ, once the person dies, فَأَمَّا إِنْ كَانَ مِنَ الْمُقَرَّبِينَ فَرَوْحٌ وَرَيْحَانٌ وَجَنَّةُ نَعِيمٍ. And if someone is from the muqarrabeen, from the ones who are drawn close, the front runners that the surah at the beginning talked about, then immediately they're going to be in a state of luxury. Rawhun wa rayhan, it's a beautiful breeze, and it's beautiful trees and flowers, and it's a paradise of joy. وَأَمَّا إِنْ كَانَ مِنْ أَصْحَابِ الْيَمِينَ. And if he's from the people of the right, فَسَلَامٌ لَكَ مِنْ أَصْحَابِ الْيَمِينَ. We send you salams from them. They're in a state where they can send peace. So they're not enjoying it as much as the other group, but they're happy. They're peaceful. وَأَمَّا إِنْ كَانَ مِنَ الْمُكَذِّبِينَ الضَّالِّينَ. However, they're from the other group, the ones who refuse to believe, the ones who were led astray. فَنُزُلٌ مِّنْ حَمِيمٍ وَتَصْلِيَةُ جَحِيمٍ. They are taken to a place of scalding water and burning fire. إِنَّ هَذَا, you see this? لَهُوَ حَقُّ الْيَقِينِ. This is the truth of certainty. Yaqeen certainty has levels. There's yaqeen, there's ilm al-yaqeen, there's ayn al-yaqeen, there's haqq al-yaqeen. Haqq al-yaqeen is the highest level of certainty. The surah is saying, you see these three groups and where they're going to be going in al-qiyamah. This is haqq al-yaqeen. This is the highest level of certainty that ever existed. فَسَبِّحْ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الْعَظِيمِ. So exalt your Lord, the Great, so that maybe you'll land yourself in one of the first two groups, inshallah. That's what Surat Al-Waqi does. It compares the three groups that exist Yawm al-Qiyamah. It's a different criteria that judge people that day. Make sure you land yourself in one of those first two groups. I hope that was beneficial. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. جزاكم الله خيرا. بارك الله فيكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى.